Hello, this is going to be the first video in the series I am preparing for how to test Angular applications. I expect people who are gonna watch this to be familiar with TypeScript, JavaScript, and Angular in general, because I'm not going to cover those topics specifically. I will comment on what I'm doing and why I'm doing this, but it's not a tutorial on Angular per se. This is going to be similar to my video series about React testing. We're going to build a similar to-do app just in Angular, and we are going to test this via Angular tools. For starters, just create an Angular application via Angular CLI. If you already have Angular installed, then just start with this step, ng new and whatever you want your folder to be called, and then you can just serve your application. If you don't have Angular installed, you can install it globally with this command from here. After that, just create your new application. If you've done all of that, next what you're gonna need is Angular testing library. This is a similar library to what I've used in React testing series. That was called React testing library, and this is called Angular testing library. It encourages good testing practices, and I find it easier to use than some other libraries. And you can install this library just with this command, npm install testing libraries /Angular --save dev. At this point, let's just start with a super simple test, and then we're going to do more interesting stuff in the next videos. Whatever component you're testing in the Angular, you have CSS file, you have HTML file, you have TypeScript file, and beside that, Angular will create for each component .spec.ts file, which gives an Angular a clue that this sort of file would need to be run for testing. Angular does provide you with testing frameworks. In React, you would have to install everything yourself. Karma, Jest, I was using Jest. In this Angular, you already have Karma when you run ng test, and Jasmine. And we're going to use Angular testing library for grabbing components, typing into them, and all of that stuff. This describe block here describes what we're testing, as in this case, we're testing the app component, the main component. This right here is a hook, so sort of what we're going to test, not to test, but sort of what we're going to run before each of the tests. In here, we would have each portion of the test. We test this here and pass a callback. Whatever we test here, before each of these tests that starts with it, before each of these blocks run, we would run this testbed configuration model, and we would declare what components we want to run in this test, and in our case it's app component, which would run our compiler components. Don't get hung up too much on this. I'm figuring all this out myself, and I just know that for now we need this to be here, and that's all. So now let's start with the more simple of the tests. It's not necessarily a very good one, but we're going to test the title of the application, that it says what we think it should say. And we're going to render our components with Angular testing library. To do that, we first need to import Angular testing library. Let's also title our test correctly. Say it should render the title correctly. Const component, now we call render function, and we pass here app component. Our render function should come from the Angular testing library. You just import it at the top like this. Now Angular testing library gives you API to grab some elements by different properties, like by label, by test ID. You can render these components, and after you render, it gives you back sort of methods, like click on a component, type on a component, get by test ID, whatever. You can go visit this link, Angular testing library, and in here you would see all of this examples and API stuff. If you need to go a little bit deeper yourself. For now, what we can do also, we can run ng test, and this is going to open another Chrome window or whatever your default browser is with, and it's going to launch your application and run tests for it. So this is Karma starts on Chrome, Windows 10, and 1 spec, 0 failures, because we don't really test anything here. But let's start with component. We have get here by test ID. Let's say title. Now, our testing framework gives us certain specific methods and functions, certain API to do stuff and to test stuff and match actual values against expected values. And the way this works is you call this expect, you pass whatever value here, and this doesn't work because property get by test ID doesn't exist on this type because it returns as a promise, and we need to await a promise. And when we use await, we need our callbacks to be async. Now this doesn't. So now that we grab an element by test ID title, and I'm going to explain what test ID is in a minute, and now get its property text content, which is a string, we expect it to be now, which writes as you would write in English, to be, let's say, todo-app, which is what we called it here, I think, in app component. Case matters. Okay. So now this test would fail. First of all, because we don't have anything by this test ID. Unable to find an element by data test ID title. The way you can grab elements with Angular testing library is by using something called data test ID attribute, and you call it title, and let's see what happens now. And now total 1 success. We can visit our Chrome and 1 spec 0 failures to do app renders. So if we change something here, just to make sure our test really works, yeah, we get a failed. Get it back, we get it back, and it works. Okay, so this is it, the very basic intro into the how to test Angular components. We're going to build this entire to-do application using local storage, deleting tasks, rendering tasks, re-rendering tasks, and we're going to test it all in a future video. Anyway, hope you find it useful, and that's the end of it for now.